Did you know that in a single week, you probably lie to 1 in 3 people you talk to? Research shows this happens with shocking regularity. But here's the real mystery. Have you ever realized how often you've been deceived without noticing? In this investigation, we'll uncover why humans are so easily fooled by deception. I'm going to show you exactly how liars manipulate your brain shortcuts, why your intuition about body language is probably wrong, and the real techniques intelligence agencies use to spot deception. From historical spy operations to everyday interactions, you'll discover the hidden world of lies all around us. The evolution of deception, from ancient spies to modern science. The quest to uncover deception is as old as humanity itself. Over 3,000 years ago, in ancient China, truth seekers developed what might be considered the world's first lie detector test, the rice powder test. Suspects would chew rice powder, then spit it out. If the powder came out dry, they were considered to be lying. This technique was based on the observation that stress and anxiety, emotions often experienced while lying, reduce saliva production. When you're nervous about getting caught in a lie, your mouth literally goes dry. Pretty clever for 3,000 years ago, right? This fascination with detecting deception continued through medieval times, though the methods became considerably more brutal. Accused liars faced trials by ordeal. Imagine the searing pain of carrying red-hot iron across a courtyard, skin blistering with each step, all to prove your truthfulness. These methods relied on supernatural beliefs that divine forces would protect the honest. The body itself was expected to manifest truth physically. Surviving without injury meant honesty. Failure meant deception and often death. As these primitive methods faded, they left an important legacy: the concept that physiological responses could reveal hidden truths. This principle found new expression in the early 20th century with the invention of the polygraph machine. This technological approach measured physical responses like heart rate, blood pressure, and respiration to identify signs of deception. The theory made sense. Lying creates stress. Stress triggers measurable physical reactions. However, early polygraphs faced a fundamental limitation. They detected stress, but couldn't differentiate between a liar's nervousness and an innocent person's interrogation anxiety. The Cold War era dramatically expanded deception research. Through darker channels, the CIA's Project MK-Ultra explored truth serums and mind control techniques for interrogation. While ethically troubling, these programs reflected the perceived necessity in a high-stakes international conflict. Intelligence agencies on both sides of the Iron Curtain turned lie detection into another battlefield, creating a strange arms race of psychological warfare methods. The ethical compromises made during this period would later inform stricter research protocols. Even as the quest for reliable deception detection continued, government investment during this period transformed deception detection from folk practice to scientific inquiry. Both Soviet and American intelligence agencies developed competing theories and techniques, each claiming superiority in extracting truth. Though many of these methods were later discredited, they established the groundwork for more systematic approaches to understanding human deception. The pivotal advancement came in 1969 with psychologist Paul Ekman and Wallace Frieson's nonverbal leakage hypothesis. Their research suggested that when people lie, certain involuntary facial expressions, micro-expressions, might leak through, revealing concealed emotions. These lightning-fast facial movements occur before conscious control can suppress them, offering potential windows into deception. Ekman and Friesen shifted focus from obvious behaviors to subtle involuntary cues, establishing the foundation for modern deception analysis. Studies show that the average person tells approximately 2 lies daily and lies to roughly 1 in 3 people they interact with one-on-one. Despite this prevalence in everyday life and thousands of years of effort, our accuracy at detecting lies has barely improved beyond chance levels. What makes this historical journey significant is how it reflects our enduring struggle with a fundamental aspect of human interaction. From ancient rice powder to sophisticated facial analysis, our methods have grown increasingly complex, yet the challenge persists. Each approach, however flawed, taught valuable lessons about human behavior and the difficulty of isolating deceptive signals from other forms of emotional response. The scientific methodologies developed throughout the 20th century created the foundation for current deception research. Each failure pointed researchers toward new questions, gradually building a more nuanced understanding of how deception works. A quest that continues today with modern technology and psychological insights. Those failures in deception research revealed something far more unsettling than anyone expected. What if the entire foundation of how we detect lies is built on sand? Law enforcement agencies worldwide still train officers to look for specific body language signals that science has thoroughly debunked, potentially leading to false accusations and even wrongful convictions. Think about every crime show you've watched. The detective narrows their eyes, catches the suspect looking away, and declares, "I know you're lying." It's a scene we've seen countless times. The shifty eyes, the nervous fidgeting, the face touching. These supposedly universal tells have become so ingrained in our cultural understanding of deception that we automatically look for them when trying to spot a liar. The problem? Science tells us they're virtually useless, despite overwhelming evidence against their validity. These myths persist through powerful media portrayals, confirmation bias, and institutional resistance to change. They've jumped from fiction into reality with devastating consequences. This misconception extends beyond TV dramas into professional training. The Reed technique stands as the most prominent example. This 9-step interrogation process, used by police departments across the globe, places heavy emphasis on reading body language to determine truthfulness. Officers are trained to watch for specific nonverbal behaviors like posture changes, excessive gestures, and eye movements. Despite mountains of research proving these indicators don't reliably correlate with deception. Consider the case of Juan Rivera, who was wrongfully convicted of murder and spent 20 years in prison. During intensive interrogation, detectives interpreted his nervous behaviors and inconsistent statements as signs of guilt. In reality, Rivera, who had documented mental health issues, was displaying anxiety from the high-pressure situation. His exoneration years later came through DNA evidence, not a reassessment of his supposed deceptive behaviors. The consequences extend far beyond academic debate. When law enforcement relies on debunked methods, innocent people face false accusations. An interrogator, convinced they've spotted deception through body language, might intensify pressure on a suspect who's displaying nervous behaviors for entirely different reasons. Perhaps anxiety about being questioned by authorities, cultural differences in communication, or simply discomfort with the situation. Research conclusively shows these supposed indicators are unreliable. In 2003, researcher Bella DePaulo conducted a comprehensive meta-analysis examining 58 different deception cues. The results were startling. Most supposed tells either had tiny effect sizes or weren't consistently present at all. The study demonstrated there simply is no universal Pinocchio's nose, no reliable indicator of dishonesty. The problem grows more complicated with cultural differences. What might seem deceptive in one culture could be normal in another. A study by Bond and colleagues revealed that Jordanians typically exhibited more speech pauses when lying compared to when telling the truth. Americans in the same study showed completely different patterns. This variation makes applying universal body language tells for lie detection absurd. Gender introduces another layer of complexity. Men and women often display different nonverbal behaviors when being deceptive. Men tend to suppress hand gestures and exhibit more facial self-touching compared to women when lying. Women showed higher levels of vocal stress during prepared deception. These gender-based differences further undermine the notion of universal deception signals. With all this evidence against body language as a reliable deception indicator, why do these myths persist? Confirmation bias plays a role. We remember the hits and forget the misses. If someone avoiding eye contact later proves dishonest, that reinforces your belief in the tell. You'll forget all the times honest people avoided eye contact or liars maintained perfect eye contact. The hard truth: we're terrible at detecting lies because we're looking for the wrong signals. The average person's accuracy in spotting deception hovers around 53%. Barely better than flipping a coin. Our intuitions about lying, shaped by media and popular psychology, lead us astray, with devastating real-world consequences when these flawed methods determine someone's fate. The body language myth: why your instincts are wrong. Inside the liar's mind. Cognitive load and emotional leakage. If lie detection through body language is so unreliable, what actually happens inside a liar's mind? The brain performs an exhausting balancing act when fabricating falsehoods, juggling the truth, the lie, and monitoring your reactions all at once. This mental strain creates subtle but measurable effects that science has only recently begun to understand. When someone tells you a lie, their brain is engaged in a complex cognitive battle. According to groundbreaking research by Virchie and his team, lying creates significant cognitive load that truth-telling simply doesn't require. Think about it. When you lie, your brain must simultaneously hold both the truth and the fabrication. In working memory, it's comparable to juggling 3 balls at once: the truth, the fabrication, and your perception of whether the listener believes you, while someone keeps changing the weight of each ball. This mental juggling act demands serious processing power. Your brain needs to suppress the truth while constructing a plausible alternative, all while monitoring how your lie is being received. Are they buying it? Do I need to adjust my story? That's 3 separate mental tasks happening simultaneously. And our brains simply weren't designed to handle this kind of cognitive multitasking efficiently. This increased brain activity produces observable behavioral changes. When your mental resources are stretched thin by maintaining a lie, other functions get less attention. Research has documented specific patterns. Liars often show decreased blinking frequency as their attention focuses inward on managing the deception. Hand movements typically reduce as the brain diverts resources away from normal gestural communication. Even speech patterns change, with liars frequently defaulting to simpler language constructions that require less mental bandwidth. In everyday situations, this cognitive strain might manifest as someone stumbling over details during a high-stakes conversation, like when a teenager explains why they missed curfew or an employee justifies a missed deadline. The strain of maintaining consistency while fabricating details causes noticeable hesitations and simplified explanations. Green and colleagues found that these changes stem directly from inhibitory control processes activated during deception. When you're lying, your brain works overtime to suppress behaviors that might give you away. This mental suppression manifests physically: less movement in your hands, legs, and feet, and fewer illustrative gestures that normally accompany truthful speech. This cognitive strain directly amplifies powerful emotional responses. According to Ekman and Friesen's nonverbal leakage hypothesis, liars experience a surge of emotions that can break through their deceptive facade. Nervousness creates a knot in your stomach. Guilt activates parts of your brain associated with moral reasoning. Anxiety triggers physical stress responses. These emotions require additional management, further taxing your cognitive resources. These emotional responses manifest as emotional leakage, brief, involuntary displays of genuine emotion that contradict the lie being told. Sometimes these appear as micro-expressions, flashes of emotion across the face lasting just fractions of a second. Other times, they emerge as inconsistencies between what someone says and how they say it. The stakes of a lie significantly amplify these effects. Brinke and Porter's 2012 study of high-stakes deception showed that when consequences were life-changing, Liars displayed more pronounced disgust and fewer expressions of genuine sadness, along with increased gaze aversion and head shaking. Behavioral leakage that revealed their deception despite their efforts to appear sincere. What makes these findings valuable is that they shift the focus of deception detection from looking for specific tells to recognizing patterns of cognitive strain instead of watching for nose touching or eye contact. Trained observers can look for clusters of behaviors indicating mental overload, simplified language patterns, reduced movement, less spontaneous elaboration, and brief flashes of contradictory emotion. The science of cognitive load has practical applications beyond just catching liars. Investigators now use cognitive interview techniques that deliberately increase mental strain on potential deceivers. By asking unexpected questions or requiring reverse chronological accounts, they can amplify the cognitive burden of maintaining lies. When mental resources are stretched this thin, deceptive facades become much harder to maintain. The liar's paradox: how deception harms the deceiver. Investigators have mastered techniques to break down liars through cognitive strain. But what happens when lies go undetected? The answer challenges everything we thought we knew about successful deception. Recent research reveals a disturbing irony. Even when lies completely evade detection, they silently damage the liar's own mental well-being and social connections. This psychological damage occurs regardless of whether anyone ever discovers the truth, creating what scientists now call the liar's paradox, where successfully deceiving others leads to a personal failure in maintaining authentic connections. Consider the case of successful deception. While we typically worry about getting caught in a lie, the real damage happens even when you get away with it. This finding shifts our understanding from focusing on detection to recognizing the psychological toll lying takes on the person doing the deceiving, a form of self-sabotage operating below conscious awareness. The act of lying creates an immediate disconnection from the person you're talking to. When you tell someone a lie, your brain begins rewiring your perception of that relationship through a fascinating psychological mechanism. When you deceive someone, you start perceiving them as less trustworthy, even though they've done nothing wrong. This phenomenon, known as deceiver's distrust, works like a mirror. You project your own dishonesty onto them. This creates a growing chasm between yourself and those you claim to love. The more you lie to someone, the less you trust them, and the more distance you feel. Over time, chronic liars often find themselves increasingly isolated, their web of deceptions actively pushing others away, while damaging their ability to form genuine connections. Even with their lies undiscovered, maintaining these deceptions creates a form of self-imposed exile from authentic relationships. Research confirms this pattern. One study examined an extensive conversational database and found that participants who rated themselves as less trustworthy consistently reported reduced closeness with their conversation partners. This relationship was mediated by how they perceived their partner's trustworthiness. People who saw themselves as dishonest tended to view others the same way, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy of distrust and distance. To establish causality, researchers conducted an experiment randomly assigning participants to either lie or tell the truth during conversations. The results were striking. Those instructed to lie reported significantly less closeness with their partners afterward. Analysis confirmed that deceptive participants rated their conversation partners as less honest than truthful participants did, directly correlating with decreased feelings of closeness. The act of lying itself creates immediate social barriers. Even more concerning, research indicates that lying correlates directly with loneliness. People who report telling more lies experience greater loneliness in their daily lives. This holds true even for relational lies, those well-intentioned falsehoods told to maintain social harmony or protect others' feelings. Despite their seemingly benevolent purpose, these lies still contribute to the liar's sense of isolation. This relationship persists even when controlling for social network size and diversity. You can be surrounded by friends and family, but if you're regularly dishonest with them, you're likely to feel lonely despite these connections. This suggests that authenticity, not just quantity of relationships, matters for emotional well-being. The pattern creates a downward spiral. Individuals with a higher dispositional tendency to deceive were significantly less trusting of others in general. This reduced trust directly mediated the relationship with increased loneliness. As people lie more, they trust others less, intensifying their isolation, potentially driving them to lie even more to maintain relationships they no longer feel connected to. The science offers a compelling explanation for why honesty, despite sometimes being difficult in the moment, may be crucial for long-term psychological well-being. When we lie, we create a trust deficit, not just with others, but within ourselves. We begin to see the world through a lens of suspicion, where authentic connection becomes increasingly difficult to achieve or maintain. Gaslighting, the ultimate psychological weapon, that internal lens of suspicion, created by lying pales in comparison to what happens when someone deliberately manipulates your reality. Imagine losing trust in your own mind, questioning your memories, perceptions, and judgment because someone systematically erodes your grip on reality. This is gaslighting, one of the most devastating forms of manipulation human beings can experience. In 1944, the film Gaslight portrayed a husband methodically undermining his wife's sanity by manipulating small details in their environment, dimming gaslights while denying they changed, moving items and claiming she misplaced them. This fictional thriller evolved into a recognized psychological concept that describes a profound form of psychological warfare. Gaslighting represents a systematic campaign to undermine someone's entire perception of reality. It's psychological warfare designed to erode your trust in yourself, the ultimate manipulation that leaves victims questioning their own judgment, memory, and sanity. Like peeling away layers of certainty one by one, gaslighters slowly strip their victims of confidence until they can no longer trust their own experiences. The term originated from the 1938 play Gaslight and its film adaptations, including the 1944 version starring Ingrid Bergman. What makes gaslighting particularly insidious is its calculated nature. It's rarely accidental, but rather a deliberate pattern of manipulation designed to make the victim trust the perpetrator while doubting themselves. Gaslighting typically unfolds through distinct phases. Idealization. The manipulator establishes trust and dependence through charm and seeming perfection. Devaluation. Reality distortion begins while expressing concern for the victim's confusion. Discarding. Once thoroughly destabilized, the victim may be abandoned or controlled through intermittent positive reinforcement. In intimate relationships, gaslighting takes devastating forms through persistent denial. That never happened. Reality distortion. Everyone agrees with me, not you. And projection. You're the one with the problem. These tactics systematically undermine confidence, creating profound psychological trauma that erodes identity and trust in one's experiences. Gaslighting extends beyond personal relationships into workplaces and political spheres amplified by power imbalances. Managers might dismiss an employee's ideas, then claim they never heard the suggestion, or withhold crucial information before criticizing incomplete work. Political figures make provably false statements, then attack fact-checkers or create so much conflicting information that citizens abandon the search for truth. This erosion of shared reality profoundly impacts democratic societies dependent on common understanding of facts. Intelligence agencies have historically employed gaslighting in psychological operations. During the Cold War, both American and Soviet intelligence services developed methods to destabilize targets through reality manipulation. Declassified documents reveal operations where agents would break into homes to slightly rearrange furniture or make repeated hang-up calls, all designed to create psychological distress and make targets question their sanity. What makes gaslighting particularly dangerous is its difficulty to recognize. The manipulator often acts concerned and kind, saying things like, "I'm worried about you," or "I'm just trying to help." Victims might feel guilty for doubting someone they trust, creating a perfect storm of confusion and self-doubt. 3 tactics make gaslighting especially hard to identify. Selective evidence. Finding the one detail you got wrong to invalidate your entire experience. Strategic isolation. Cutting you off from support systems that might validate your perceptions. Concern when challenged. Making you feel unreasonable for questioning their version of reality. The psychological impact can be devastating. Victims report anxiety, depression, and substance abuse as they struggle with their deteriorating grip on reality. The phrase "it's all in your head" becomes a haunting refrain, undermining self-trust. This creates a perfect environment for continued manipulation, as someone who doubts their own judgment becomes increasingly dependent on their manipulator for reality checks. Cognitive shortcuts. Why your brain believes lies. The same brain that gets manipulated by gaslighters is already betraying you in ways you'd never suspect. Ever wonder why intelligence agencies don't need elaborate mind control when simple repetition can implant false beliefs even in the most skeptical minds? The science reveals something far more unsettling than we might want to admit. Your brain comes pre-programmed to accept falsehoods. You've probably heard that humans are rational creatures who carefully evaluate information before accepting it as true. But cognitive scientists have discovered our brains operate like smartphones, with auto-accept as the default setting. We're wired to initially accept every piece of information we encounter as true. Your default setting isn't skepticism, it's acceptance. Only after this initial acceptance does your brain potentially engage in the secondary process of tagging something as false. This evolutionary shortcut once helped our ancestors process information quickly, but now it leaves us dangerously exposed. This automatic acceptance creates the illusory truth effect. When you hear the same statement repeatedly, your brain interprets that familiarity as a signal of truth, regardless of actual accuracy. Similar to how you find yourself humming a song you've heard multiple times without consciously choosing to remember it, repeated exposure to information creates fluency in your brain's processing pathways. The truly disturbing part, this happens even when you initially recognize the information was false. Your conscious knowledge gets overridden by your brain's shortcut. The first time you hear a false claim, you might evaluate it critically, but each additional exposure makes the information feel more familiar. This familiarity creates processing fluency, the ease with which your brain processes information. Your mind misattributes this fluency as truthfulness. By the 5th exposure, your brain often begins accepting the falsehood, despite initial skepticism. What's particularly troubling is that everyone is vulnerable. Studies show higher intelligence and analytical thinking offer no protection against this bias. A single exposure to a fabricated headline measurably increases its perceived truthfulness when encountered again. Your brain prioritizes efficiency over accuracy. This vulnerability explains why falsehoods persist after debunking. When you learn something is false, both the original misinformation and its correction coexist in memory, competing for recall. Psychologists call this the continued influence effect. The original falsehood continues influencing your thinking even when you consciously accept the correction. Politicians understand this cognitive vulnerability. They know repeating a claim makes it seem credible regardless of accuracy. By the time fact-checkers respond, the damage is done. The claim has begun establishing itself through repetition. This tactic extends beyond politics into international espionage. Throughout the Cold War, intelligence agencies perfected exploiting these cognitive biases. They discovered strategically deployed repetition, combined with emotional manipulation, was more effective than fancy mind control techniques. By exposing target populations to carefully crafted messages through seemingly independent sources, they could implant beliefs that persisted even after debunking. The subtlety made this approach genius. When you hear the same information from multiple apparently unrelated sources, your brain interprets this as independent confirmation rather than coordination. Intelligence agencies would plant a fabricated story in one publication, then have it independently discovered, elsewhere, creating an illusion of consensus. Each subsequent exposure deepened belief, making it increasingly resistant to correction. These campaigns created lasting frameworks of belief. Once you accept certain foundational ideas, you become receptive to related falsehoods that fit within that framework. This creates a vulnerability spiral where initial manipulations open the door for increasingly extreme beliefs. The techniques refined during the Cold War have evolved into sophisticated information warfare tactics today. Modern campaigns exploit not just repetition, but emotional triggers that bypass rational thought. Content designed to evoke anger or fear spreads faster and embeds more deeply than neutral information. When misinformation aligns with existing beliefs, it becomes almost immune to debunking due to confirmation bias, your brain's tendency to accept information that supports what you already believe. The defense protocol. Protecting yourself from manipulation. What if you could train your brain to be immune to deception? Modern misinformation exploits our cognitive weaknesses, but the same psychological research that exposed our vulnerabilities has revealed something potentially more powerful: a set of mental habits that can transform your mind from an easy target into psychological terrain too costly for manipulators to navigate. Most of us have been taught the wrong approach to protecting ourselves from deception. We're told to watch for specific tells or to scrutinize statements after we hear them. But this reactive strategy puts us at a major disadvantage. By the time you're analyzing whether someone lied to you, that information has already entered your mental processing system and begun its work. It's like trying to remove poison from your bloodstream after ingestion. Possible, but far less effective than preventing exposure in the first place. Our psychological vulnerabilities make us susceptible to manipulation. Manipulators target emotions like fear and anger to bypass rational thinking. They exploit our tendency to believe repeated statements regardless of accuracy. They leverage our natural trust in perceived authorities and our preference for information that confirms existing beliefs. This is where pre-bunking comes in. A proactive approach, revolutionizing how we think about manipulation. Resistance. Rather than detecting deception after the fact, pre-bunking prepares your brain to recognize manipulation techniques before encountering them. Think of it as a psychological vaccine that strengthens your mental immune system against viral misinformation. Each exposure to weakened manipulation techniques builds protective cognitive layers that activate automatically when encountering similar patterns. The science supporting this approach is compelling. Researcher Stefan Lewandowski conducted experiments with nearly 30,000 participants across 7 studies. His team created short educational videos explaining common manipulation techniques. The results were remarkable. Participants developed significantly stronger skepticism toward falsehoods they encountered later, even when those falsehoods used different content, but similar tactics. This pre-bunking effect works through inoculation theory. Just as medical vaccines expose you to a weakened pathogen to build immunity, psychological inoculation exposes you to weakened versions of misinformation alongside explanations of manipulation techniques. This approach is powerful because it doesn't require debunking every individual piece of misinformation, an impossible task today. Instead, it targets underlying techniques used across different contexts and topics. Intelligence professionals employ specific cognitive defense strategies everyday people can adopt. They practice rigorous source evaluation and information verification. When scrolling through social media headlines, they automatically consider source credibility, potential biases, and motivation. They look for corroboration from multiple independent sources and identify inconsistencies within the information itself. This strategic skepticism doesn't mean becoming cynical. Rather, it involves developing the habit of pausing before accepting information. When a friend shares a shocking news story in conversation, you might ask where they learned it, or check multiple sources before forming an opinion. Emotional awareness serves as another powerful defense, particularly against sophisticated tactics like gaslighting. By monitoring your emotional state during interactions, You can recognize when someone attempts to make you doubt your perceptions or memories, when you feel confused or begin questioning your own recollection during a conversation with a manipulative colleague or partner. These emotional signals serve as warning signs. Simple practices can strengthen your defense against manipulation in everyday situations. Educate yourself about common manipulation techniques. Understanding how the illusory truth effect works helps you resist it when encountering repeated false claims online. Practice pausing before accepting new information, especially when it triggers strong emotions. Ask yourself where the information came from and what evidence supports it. What's particularly powerful about this proactive approach is that it works across different contexts. From intimate relationships to workplace interactions, to consuming news and social media, the fundamental principles of pre-bunking, strategic skepticism, and emotional awareness protect you because they target the universal psychological vulnerabilities that manipulators exploit. As we wrap up this journey through the world of deception, there's one undeniable truth. Our minds are hardwired to fall for certain lies. The illusory truth effect shows that repeated falsehoods gradually feel more truthful, even when we initially recognize them as false. This cognitive vulnerability explains why misinformation spreads so efficiently across our digital landscape. Social media algorithms reinforce these false narratives, creating echo chambers where falsehoods flourish unchallenged. The most potent defense is understanding our own psychological blind spots. How will you apply this awareness in your daily life? By recognizing how our minds process information, we build resilience against manipulation.